Hello and welcome to Dialogue of Civilisations. Basic notions may have different meanings in different cultures. Diversity, inclusivity, and equality are the concepts that, despite their presumed universality, are prone to culturally biased interpretations. And times change, and we follow in a chameleon-like manner. In a rapidly evolving world with ethno-religious national identities being constantly reconstructed, the notion of diversity has become a focal point of contention, with pertinent questions being asked as to whether diversity is an end goal in itself or actually a means of building a better society. Do we desperately need diversity for its own sake or as a response to the changing composition of the communities in which we live? What is the role of multilateral diplomacy in producing universal notions that transcend cultural divides? Today I will make a valiant attempt to find an answer to this and many other questions with my guest, and my guest today is Professor Susana Mangana of Deusto University, Bilbao, Spain. Welcome to Dialogue of Civilisations, Professor.
Thank you very much. A pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you very much indeed. The term diversity is not a new one, of course. We always talked about melting pots, big cities, attracting talents across the world. But meaning diversity now is slightly different, of course. What do we mean by diversity at this juncture of human development?
Well, when we talk about cultural diversity today, we mean we are implying we live in a globalized world. So we have to be aware of that diverse world that we have, in the sense that we have different ethnicities living next to us. We have different cultural customs and habits, but also religious diversity. And I think we often tend to focus, or countries tend to focus too much on religious diversity, forgetting other cultural traditions that make us diverse, but in a very positive way. So I always say, and I always teach in my classes, that rather than focusing on our differences, we should focus on similarities in order to bridge the gap and also to build, like a bridge among cultures, but also to find peaceful and very harmonic ways to coexistence. Because at the end of the day, when you look at humanity, we all want the same things. We want to see our kids happy. We want to send them to school. We want them to have a positive future, whether it is going to university or getting some experience, professional experience. But we all want the same thing, which is to be human beings and to live a very dignified life. So I think diversity today encompasses many issues like in the past, but especially being aware of those differences that make us diverse, but at the same time very rich as humanity.
Quite often in the context of European Union, we hear this term, unity in diversity. Is it still alive, this concept?
Well, today, if I will have to look at the current political trend in European Union, and especially the divisions within the European Union, I will say no, it's not alive. On the other hand, I want to be more optimistic and say that sometimes we see a divorce, or what I say is a divorce between political figures, political leaders, and civil societies. Very often, I find that our political leaders don't deserve us as societies, in the sense that it is society that tells them, we don't want division, we don't want to be told lies. We know we are diverse, but give us solutions to the problems, like people's problems, like good social services, good education service, especially, what do we care about? Education, health, insurance, transportation. So those are social services for me. So again, I think in Europe, we are aware that there are different paths and trends within Europe, but I still think that it is a very poor quality of our leadership that is making us think of the problems rather than the beauty and the wonderful part of being diverse.
Quite often European politicians say that diversity, modern version of diversity, was imposed on Europe. That wasn't our choice, and that we already reached a level of diversity which is very difficult to bear. It's gone out of proportion, and we have to have, of course, the migration should be regulated, there's no doubt about that, but diversity and the rhetoric surrounding diversity has become a threat endangering European civilization. Many European politicians say so. How do you explain their reasoning?
Well, I think this is only part of the problem. I mean, as I always comment in these type of interviews, I think that we have to be aware that there is a rising far-right ideology in certain countries in Europe. So those are the ones that are always claiming that we are threatened by the amount of immigrants that arrive in Europe. We didn't call for them to come, but that's not quite the case. I mean, Europe has a history of colonization, and especially we were in Africa, we were in Latin America, we were in many countries. So it's only normal and natural that we sold the world this idea of the European Union being a model, a reference in the sense of economic integration and having countries that are enjoying and experiencing a very good welfare system. So it is only natural that immigrants want to arrive to a country where they're going to find opportunities for their life and for their descendants. So we shouldn't be afraid of that. I think it is only people that are too narrow-minded that they feel threatened by the arrival of these immigrants. It's not everybody in Europe that feels like that. Sure. And in any case, you cannot stop immigration. You may build walls, but they will break the wall in another place, or they'll find other ways to get in. You may, for example, sink their boats when they're coming to Canary Islands, but they will find other ways to get in. So if you are really so concerned about immigration and diversity and being threatened by other cultures, well, why don't you engage more in exploring ways to make their lives better in Africa, in Latin America, in Asian countries? For example, the amount of conflict and wars that are happening right now that are forcing people and millions to leave their homes, climate change. We have to talk about a new trend of immigrants, which is climate refugees, or forced by the climate change to be refugees. We have to engage as countries. We need to realize that unless we solve the problems in their origin place, they will still want to come to, to countries that enjoy a better economic status, or that at least they presume they're going to have a possibility there to start a new life, So, I don't feel threatened by the arrival of others. I think they come to teach us good things as well. And we Europeans, too often, we think we are the center of the world, and we're not anymore. And we're talking here from Azerbaijan. I think we need to learn more about other regions like Central Asia, South Caucasus. What do we know about Azerbaijan in Europe? We need to learn about other traditions, other ways of resolving conflict without always resorting to our own, set of mind, because we don't have the solution for all the problems. And I think Europe needs to realize that.
And you earlier mentioned about religious diversity. European politicians, technocrats, bureaucrats talk about positively managing religious diversity. What is the positive management of religious diversity?
Well, you see, when we talk about that in Europe, it's slightly different, because in Europe, we get majority of immigrants come from the African continent or from Muslim nations like Syria, Afghanistan, or Iraq in the past. So when they talk about positively managing the religious diversity, they mean, what do we do with Islam? How do we manage all these claims from Muslim citizens living with us in France, in Belgium? I mean, think of Belgium. It is a country that, according to certain statistics, in year 2030, which is after tomorrow, in a few years' time, almost 50% of the population will be Muslim, or they'll pertain, or they'll adhere to the Islamic faith. So, of course, this is a challenge. I wouldn't say a threat, but a challenge, how to manage all this. But when they talk about religious diversity, they're really worried about managing Islam, in the sense that they don't want it to be a real threat for the Jewish-Christian foundation of most countries in Europe. So again, I don't think this is a good way or a positive way to solve the situation, because it is a challenge, but it shouldn't be a problem. You see what I mean? Unless you want it to be a problem.
A challenge could be transformed into positivity.
That's it.
And also about the rise of Europe's far right, we have noticed the parties doing very well, being part of different governments in different European capitals, and their rhetoric. Do you see the connection between the far right rhetoric and the fear of competition?
Of course, the far-right rhetoric is always finding a scapegoat, which is the immigration or the immigrants. They come and steal our jobs. They come and replace nationals, you know, which is not, I mean, we know that, or they commit crimes, you know, the rate of crime has gone up because of immigrants being with us, you know, which is not true at all. That's why in many countries, even in Spain, where I belong, they have to have institutes producing data all the time to reinforce this idea that it is not migrants that commit the crimes, it's also nationals that commit those crimes. The wonderful part of this data is that it breaks all those myths, which are reinforced by stereotypes. That's why education is very important, because we need to emphasize all this. We have to combat discrimination and prejudice in order to break away with those myths, because otherwise people in the street, they start having all these rumors and fake news, and sometimes when there is a crime that is being committed, they don't even wait for the news to tell them who committed the crime. They already think that it may be a migrant. If there is a rape happening, for example, they say, oh, all these foreigners are rapists. I mean, this is the same rhetoric that we hear from prominent leaders in the US, like President Trump, right? Because he's been re-elected, so we can now say President Trump. And he says, well, you know, all the Hispanics that come, all the Mexicans, they're rapists, and they rape women, and all the immigrants eat the pets, and, you know, this fake news that people consume every day. So to tell right from wrong, you need to be educated, you need to be well informed. But we shouldn't forget that in Europe, we had medieval times when, for example, we had quite a positive, I wouldn't say wonderful, we don't have to be romantic about it, but we have a very good positive coexistence between the three Abrahamic faiths, the three existing back then, which was Islam with Christianity and with Judaism, for example, in the south of Spain and in the Iberian Peninsula with Portugal as well, of course, in Al-Andalus time. So we need to pick up that heritage. We need to remember that coexistence and remember that together we can be more, not only richer, but we can be stronger in order to face other challenges. How do we face discipline, efficiency coming from Far East countries like North Korea, South Korea? Well, North Korea has its own problems of itself. It's quite isolated as a regime. But I mean, efficiency, discipline, these are values that we're losing very fast in Europe. And yet countries like Japan, China, Vietnam really have them ingrained in their system. So I think in order to face all those challenges and to be competitive, talking about competition, I mean, Europe cannot compete in numbers, we cannot compete in efficiency with countries like the ones I just mentioned. So we really have to be open-minded about it. What we do compete is in defending human rights, defending, for example, different diverse ideas. If we narrow ourselves, we're going to end up losing our identity as Europeans.
Yeah. We earlier talked about Judeo-Christian roots of European civilization. When you talk to your students about Islam, about the confluence of different cultural patterns within European countries, and you pose this question, the question being that, what do Europeans owe to Islam? What is their answer?
At first, they always look at you as if you're asking them something out of the blue, and they don't quite understand the question, which is quite simple. And they start thinking and they say, well, I don't think I owe them anything. And then when you start making them aware of all the advances that we gained with Islam in an Andalusian time, when it comes to mathematics, astrology, astronomy, when it comes to medicine even, they realize that it is something that we know about it, but we forgot it. Even in the Spanish language or in Portuguese language, we have over 6,000 words that come from Arabic. Their origin is Arabic, but also we had very prominent mathematicians or astrology men, like, for example, Azarquiel from Toledo, which was Tola Itala in those days, you see. And from those medieval schools of knowledge in Granada or in Toledo or in Zaragoza, Zaracusta in Arabic, they will then send all this information, all these archives, all these manuscripts will travel to different parts of Europe. First they translated Greek philosophy into Arabic, and from Arabic into Latin, and then from Latin to different Romance languages in Europe. So all of Europe benefited from the advancement or the knowledge gained in Andalusian times. at the same time, we want sometimes to forget that period because we think this is not Spain, this is not authentic Portugal, which is nonsense, because it is part of our history. Yes, at the beginning maybe it was Syrian princes that came with the Umayyads, with the Umayyads in Spain and the Caliphate in Cordoba, but after 800 years in Spain, you cannot call them foreigners. I mean, they were nationals. Of course, we didn't have a kingdom of Spain as we have it today, or in Portugal.
Or the concept of citizenship.
Yes, the concept of citizenship and nationality has changed, but I think we should be very proud of this, at least I am, and I think when I make them aware of this, actually they demand more knowledge. They want to read more about it, they want to learn, because they've forgotten things like this. Even the geographical terms in my country, most of the Levant, most of Valencia, Alicante, if you go from Barcelona south to the Mediterranean, you will find many cities and towns that have names that originate with different tribes, but also that the name has the al, prefix, which means it is originated in the Arabic language.
Earlier, we, before the interview, talked about globalization, its perils and ramifications, and the danger it has created for some local communities, cultural practices. You are from Deusto, University of Bilbao. I know that Atletico Bilbao is a very famous club, and they have got this tradition of only having players of local heritage, local origin. In the example of that particular club, how do you view the necessity of protecting something which is very valuable, which is still quite prone to the global influences? Because if that club had it adopted the policy of buying all players from across the world, that tradition would have died.
Of course, and I can see it, and I can tell you that having experienced a few months ago when it's called Copa del Rey, the championship called the King's Championship in Spain. They won, actually, a small team, as you said, only formed with local players. And I see the pride that people feel for their team, and everybody stopped working early that day, and everyone, even myself, went to the river, close to the river where they were going to go by boat. All the football players were sailing with a boat. They only take that boat out whenever they win the championship for the whole territory of Spain. So the pride in the children, but also the elderly people, it was amazing. Some people were in wheelchairs, and they were being carried by their family or relatives. They were being carried with their, headscarf tied to their neck, with the colors of the team, red and white. And I think when you feel that pride, that's when a nation thrives, And I think not losing your traditions, your customs, is something very important in a globalized world where everything is about franchises, So I think, yes, we cannot fight, we cannot stop the winds and the storm coming our way, but that doesn't mean that you have to lose your roots, your historical independence, like in the sense that not just independence as in territory independence, but I mean, each nation has valuable knowledge and valuable traditions and customs that we have to rescue and protect. Otherwise, you lose identity as well. And I think that's what makes us unique. When you go to the Basque Country, you will find a small territory, but very proud of their roots and of their traditions. And we even make a point of trying to do a revival of those traditions with our kids, teaching them at a school. And I can tell you, my youngest girls, they were born not in Basque Country, but in Latin America. And now when they're in school with their friends and they celebrate the Day of the Basque language, they enjoy it. They enjoy the celebrations, they enjoy learning about typical instruments that used to be played before. So this is something that we, the adults, have to show the younger generations in order for them to be proud as well. So having a local team that is very close to the people, that you can actually go to the stadium every weekend and see them and shake hands with them, makes a difference, If they were hired players from Argentina, Brazil, or Azerbaijan, I don't mind, any other country. Yes, maybe the very, very enthusiastic football fans will enjoy the game, but here you have the whole nation enjoying the championship that they won. You see, it's like they share the same dream. So, and I think that's very powerful.
Yes, indeed. And also, it looks like that in some ways we are living in the best of times with all this interconnectedness. The fact that I'm able to talk to you here in Azerbaijan,
yes.
we earlier had a conversation via Zoom a few days ago, it does testify to the fact that we are living in the best of times in terms of our technological advancement and so forth, but simultaneously with the advent of technology, there's a greater room for misinformation and for other moments. How does this dichotomy look like to you?
Yes, certainly we are living a very chaotic time as well, because we don't have enough laws in order to cater for all the challenges that we're facing with the intelligence, the artificial intelligence and all the new trends that are coming thanks to technology. As you said, sometimes we only see the positive changes, and certainly we have to be happy for that. Not only because we can communicate much faster and better, but because this brings solutions to medical problems as well. They can solve things that before they were irreversible. But at the same time, think of the younger generations using this artificial intelligence at the school, for example. It's not easy. You have to limit it, because otherwise they don't put their brain to function the same way. But I think this will be for a time. After that, we'll just adjust to it. And humankind has always learned to live with new technologies. The calculator was a new discovery at some point. Also the telephone, the mobiles, the satellites. So we'll just have to adjust to it. But we need to be sensitive and sensible about it, right? In the sense that there are threats coming in. For example, for organized crime, this is also an opportunity for other crimes being committed, especially like sexual offenders. This is something that we look at in Europe now. It's important because our younger generations are learning how to communicate with the other sex, through these sort of fake news, fake videos that they're seeing posted on the media, social media. So we have to at some point say, this is enough, we have to limit, or at least we have to be sensible about what age they can start using the mobile, because if you tell them don't look at these pages, they will go and look at them anyway, or the hacker some way of entering this website. So again, yes, it is a threat, but I think I prefer to see that there is this good and positive things coming out of there, and we need to learn to use them. Me as a professor, certainly, I'm trying to interact with the artificial intelligence in a way that I can put it to the best service of my students, to make classes more entertaining, to make classes attractive, to tell them, look, before we had one book for the whole class, now you can go and find all these pages and download different PDFs or whatever. So we always have to look at the positive outcomes, but also our leaders have to be worried about the legal gaps there, because sometimes, for example, your voice, you know it very well, your voice can be copied by artificial intelligence. They could substitute you or me with artificial intelligence in one day. So we need to also say, no, enough is enough. We need brains, we need people thinking, not just robots, So at some point, we do have to put a limit. But I mean, how can we stop this?
It's a question of fine balance.
Yes, finding the balance, as usual.
Indeed. Professor Mangana, I'm so grateful to you for your time.
Well, me too. This was a great conversation, and I hope to be on a stage again with you. Okay.
Hopefully.
Thank you.
Well, this was Professor Susana Mangana of Deusto University, Bilbao, Spain. We will always need to evolve in response to our changing circumstances and surroundings. However strange it may sound, self-interest, despite its perceived parochial environs, lies at the heart of what may eventually turn into altruism. Some food for thought indeed. Looking forward to welcoming you to the next episode of Dialogue of Civilisations.